Hi, and welcome to My John 17 for Life. This is a Christian podcast about finding your calling, understanding God's will, and learning how to live a life of purpose through faith and obedience. John 17:4 says, I have brought you glory on earth by finishing the work you gave me to do. And that's the heart behind what we do here. Because so many of us are asking, what is my purpose? What is God calling me to do? And how do I know if I'm living in God's will? And sometimes we don't need more pressure, we need clarity. In this podcast, I sit down with real people from all walks of life, moms, business owners, pastors, creatives, and everyday believers who are learning how to follow God, hear His voice, and walk in the purpose He has for their lives. If you've ever felt unsure about your direction, overwhelmed by life, or disconnected from your purpose, you're in the right place. Hi, Christina. Thank you for coming and talking to me this morning. I appreciate it. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your journey with God.
Absolutely. So my name is Christina Stevens. I am currently married. We've been married 11 years. And together we have a blended family of 4 children, all in which are adults. And I'm also a grandma of 3 beautiful little boys ranging from the age of, I think, 6 months to 7. And so that's always a fun time to have them around. A little bit about my journey with God. I did grow up in church, and then when I was 17, I did step away from the Lord and got into drugs and alcohol and that whole lifestyle. And that's really a big part of my testimony because it was something that I battled with on and off for many, many years. And the Lord has finally delivered me. He says freedom is always mine, but I think it took me a long time to finally walk in that freedom. And so now everything that I experienced during that time, I currently work at Refuge for Women, and I'm finding myself using a lot of the things that he's personally taught me in order to help these residents. Refuge for Women is a long-term program home for women who have been sexually trafficked or exploited. And the verse where he says he takes what was bad and turns it into his good, I can definitely see that in my life, how everything that I've gone through, he's now using it to help them. And it's just really an amazing process to see.
Wow, that's big. And it's become, with the files that came out, it's become now more in people's face.
Yes, yes.
It was something that, we kind of knew in the background, but now it's really in your face about it. So much so that the Kentucky Derby was last weekend, and they leveled up the police force that was there because a lot of that happens at big events from what I've learned.
Yes, that's very much so. Super Bowls, things like Kentucky Derby, any big event, trafficking runs rampant. And so I'm grateful that people are starting to notice it more. It's something that's been around for a very long time. But I've always said I would love to not have a job in this field. I would love for this to end.
Yes.
But it is a big task to take on. Mm-hmm.
So what season in your life truly changed you?
I think I've had a lot of seasons. I've been through rehab twice. And so the first one, I experienced a lot of healing during that time, but I also became to know the Lord on a very different level. He just met me in some really difficult places. And so it's through those experiences that I was like, okay, God is real and he's constantly pursuing me and nothing's ever going to take that away from me. And I went quite a few years where I was completely clean and sober. But then as life progressed and I became married, and when you're blending a family, it comes with challenging moments. And I just fell back into the habit of drinking. I never stepped back into drugs, but I did start drinking. And I think that's when I really struggled with more of the shame because I knew, okay, Christina, what are you doing? This isn't the answer. You've been through this before. And there were a couple of, I would say, biggest downfall moments, but there was one where my life truly was in danger. And when I was looking at my youngest son, whose name is Ethan, and I'm sitting in the hospital bed and he's talking with me, and I'm like, okay, I can't keep doing this. This was done because I was drunk and my life has meaning and I'm no longer going to do this. And I think whenever I gave up the questioning of God, like, why won't you take this away from me, this urge? Why can't you just put me on cloud 9 like I was the first time I went through rehab, and just started saying, okay, God, this is truly yours. Like, I can't do this on my own, is when once again he met me in that space. And then since then, for really the first time ever, that I can say that alcohol has no control over me. Because even in the beginning when I was sober, I still had the desire to drink. And I just
Right.
assumed that was always going to be, as Paul says, the thorn in my flesh. But it's been since that moment. I don't know. I guess it was an epiphany moment. I don't know. But I just know that was the moment that I was like, no more. Like, I'm not going to do this to my family anymore. And I'm just going to truly trust God. And yeah, I mean, to say that sometimes I don't think about it would be a lie, but it's not to the capacity that it was the first time I became clean. And so it's just really awesome to see that.
I call that the come to Jesus moment because I grew up in church as
Mhm.
well. And my come to Jesus moment was in 2015. It was like the reality of you got a choice to make.
Yeah.
And I think there's an extra benefit and burden when
Mhm.
you're a mom dealing with it
Mhm. Mhm.
because you have to decide, am I going to live for myself or am I going to get better, at least for my children? Because you
Yeah.
want better for them.
That's so true. And there's a lot of guilt that comes from the pain that I put my children through because of that decision to continue to drink. But that's also a journey that the Lord has taken me on. And, you know, I can't go back and change the past, but I've had the hard conversations with the kids and I've talked things through with them. And that's really all I can do. And thank the Lord. One of my prayers that I always pray is heal them in their hurt of the spaces that I caused. And then that's just another area I can truly give over to God because that's something I don't have
Mhm.
control over anymore. And so, yeah.
There is a lot of guilt that I've noticed for mothers, especially because we want better, we try to be better, we try all the things.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can talk to your kids and it's still difficult because they don't know what to expect. Even in my journey of growing, my adult children have said, we just have to learn to adapt to the new you.
Yeah. Wow.
Because I was a yelling mom and I'm not anymore.
Yeah.
And so when I raise my voice, my adult children are like, what's going on? They're
Yeah.
afraid, and that tears at me.
Yeah.
When you have seen your children in those moments, God was trying to teach you something that made you who you are today. What is that lesson?
I think one of the things that I just keep going back to is that he is truly faithful. There have been so many moments in my life where I would ask God, where are you? What is happening? And some of that was through my own sin. Some of that was just because of the sinful actions of other people and remembering who he really is and that he is faithful and that he has constantly pursued me. And then learning that even watching my children and some of the things they go through and their adult children, I don't know if control is the right word, but it's a different, you parent from a different way than you would if
Right.
they, and just being like, okay, God, you're faithful. I don't know what they're doing, but you're faithful and you're not going to let them go just like you didn't let me go. And it has been something that I have been saying a lot, even in this season of life, like
Mhm.
you're faithful. And I thank you for that, God.
I remind my children, this is the first time I've ever parented adults. So
Mm.
you got to give me grace because I don't know what I'm doing, just like you don't know
Oh,
what you're doing.
yes.
Because the life that they're living now isn't the same as what I was living when I was their age. The world's a different place. We barely had cell phones back then. And we
Yeah.
all had AOL, and you've got mail. It
Yes.
was a different life. And I think one of the good things about our children seeing us struggle and get back up again and apologize and repair is that they don't have this mindset of mom and dad were perfect. Mom and
Yeah.
dad didn't make mistakes. And it's okay if I make mistakes and I change and I grow and I repair.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
And
that.
I grew up with the adults never apologizing
Mhm.
because they said that you would lose respect for them if they
Mhm.
apologized. And the strained relationship is something that I didn't want to have
Yeah.
with my children.
Yeah.
So, what has God called you to in this season?
He's called me to stepping out. I think that's where the he is faithful comes in.
Mhm.
One of the things that I've just recently started doing is I created a Substack account so that I can share a lot of my writings. I've written really as far back as I can remember. Even being in kindergarten, I was in UIL competitions for ready writing and it's just something I've always loved to do and you would use as an outlet. And the way that I'm using that now is because I wrote as an outlet, I have so many different writings about my journey, whether it's through, addiction or my parents' divorce or just whatever. And so I'm at a place where I'm starting to share that, but then also how God met me in that moment. So maybe I share a poem about something, but then and explain where I was, but then also say, this is what God taught me in the moment. And this is how he met me, and he can do it for
Mhm.
you. And so it's an exciting time for me because I've always loved to write. I've always wanted to write a blog. And within really just the past few months is when I've started this journey. I feel like he has called me to write devotionals, and so I've started small in that, and I've been submitting devotionals to different organizations. Shameless plug, I've already gotten one that's going to be published. I'm really excited about that. God's so good. But yeah, and so that's one of the things that I've stepped into. Also, I did just recently change positions at my job, and I did go through a burnout. It can be a very demanding job when you're working with PTSD survivors.
Hmm.
And so I've now been given the opportunity to work at our central level, which is our national office. And I'm mentoring and supporting other program directors at all the locations, which is really neat and just exciting because once again, it's a way that God is using something that the enemy tried to destroy me with. And now I'm able to use what he's taught me in that and be there for the other program directors who's now boots on the ground, supporting them and praying with them. And so there's been a lot of different changes going on. I'm in a season of change as well as a season of healing because I just recently stepped into this position and I'm now healing from the burnout. But it's also an exciting season. I've known a lot of different things from the Lord. That He's been wanting me to do, and there's an opportunity now to finally step into that. And so it's exciting.
It's interesting that you talk about the burnout
Hmm.
because people seem to have this notion that if I step into my calling, it's going to get easier,
Yeah.
that God's just going to pave the way in front of me. And there's not going to be any problems. What else has walking out your calling looked like for you in real life?
Yeah. Dying to self for sure. Working with women who have been sexually trafficked was something that I had a longing to do for many, many years, even though that is something I never personally experienced. That demographic holds a very special place in my heart. And there was a lot of stretching. I did not have like a bachelor's or a master's degree in counseling. My background has always just been in either evangelism, and now I am pursuing my bachelor's for a theology degree. And that was truly a God thing that I was given that
Mhm.
role. But there was a lot of learning, a lot of asking questions, a lot of growing in that moment. Even though when somebody is hurt, that wasn't God's plan for them, even though I know that and that it's just the effects of sin, I also found myself asking God the hard question again, like, God, why did this happen to this resident? Why did it happen for so long? As starting at a child and now she's 40, just really kind of reevaluating and digging in deeper to the word and getting in relationship with him of asking those hard questions. And once again, developing a newfound faith in him and just trusting him with these women. So it's a season of stretching. I think stepping into God's calling is exciting, but it truly is once again dying to self. I think there's an expectation of what you think this is going to look like. And then when you step into it, you see the reality of it and just
Hmm.
handing that to God and saying, okay, like this is what is at hand. This is what you've given me. Help.
For about a year, I worked for the Division of Family Resources. We did SNAP and Medicaid.
Oh, okay.
And that was an experience. I thought it was no problem, just process paperwork, moving on. But it's so much in people's lives that I never imagined I would be. I would do interviews and people would tell me things that I didn't ask for. And that was draining.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of turnaround
Mm.
for it because of that. But besides the burnout and sometimes feeling like your sanity, what else has this calling cost you?
Wow, that's a good question. I think just once again, as I mentioned before, the questioning, the digging into the Lord,
Mm.
you think you know him and then you're handling with situations that you're like, this is not what I thought the Bible said was going to happen. Taking that to God, I do remember there was a period and which was work related, but there was also something going on with my family. And I remember asking him, like, how do I tell these girls you are faithful when I don't see it right now?
Yes.
And speaking the word to them when you're still questioning things. I think I always thought when you step into your calling, per se, you were going to have the answers because you overcame everything. And that's
Right.
certainly not the way it looks like. But once again, through it all, I can look back and just see how God was always with me and that I feel like I keep going back to he's faithful, but that he is just faithful. And, I've gotten to see some really cool testimonies and transformations from the residents there, but then I also have to trust him that And the ones that would choose to leave early, maybe it didn't work out for whatever reason, that seeds were still planted and that it's not my responsibility to save them and rescue them per se. It's my responsibility to, I always said, serve the pizza, and it's their responsibility to eat it. And so I think it also cost me sleep. That's something I'm still trying to learn to navigate, I guess I should say. When you work at a home that is literally open 24/7, 365 days a week, as the program director, you're responsible to make sure that the house is running and, workers
Right.
are there. And there were some times that I would have to step away from the family and maybe go handle a crisis in the home or take phone calls. And I know that that is the nature of the job. And I think I'm just at a point now where I'm processing, like, okay, did I take that too far? Was I there? Family is supposed to be my number one ministry. Looking back and just trying to see, like, okay, God, even though I was responsible for this, how do I separate? How do I make sure that my family didn't come last? Because I do think there were times that they did. And so that's something that if you have the answers to, I would love that because I'm still learning.
There is a balance in the physical work, but there's also the balance in the mental work, and it requires a shift of being present.
Yeah.
That is something that I have to do, is that shifting between I'm working and now I'm present with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's some days it's easier than others.
Yeah.
Some days I'm like, please just let me finish what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because my youngest ones are 13, 11, and 9.
Okay.
And so they're still in my space a lot for
Mhm.
that. The podcast being My John 17 for Life,
Mhm.
we're talking about people stepping into what God has asked them to do.
Mhm.
So it's, I have glorified you on earth. I have finished the work you've given me to do. That was Jesus' prayer.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that on the day of judgment, God's going to say, did you do the work I gave you to do?
Mm.
What does it look like for you to say, I have finished strong? I've finished the race.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me to continue to be consistent in that what he's asking me to do and be obedient. It's funny because I was with Refuge for Women for 6 years working in the home. And within that last year, he had asked me to step down, to leave that position. And I was afraid. I was really afraid. I just questioned a lot. There were just a lot of emotions behind it. And when I finally came to the point of, okay, I'm going to leave this position, is when God started opening up other doors, such as this new position that I have been able to step into. And so for me, just continuing to be obedient and trusting the Lord to continue writing. I call my Substack the courageous voice because I don't want to be afraid anymore. I want to step out in boldness and say what I feel like God is either speaking to me or the way that he's worked through me to help encourage someone else to reach a bigger platform. And so continuing to live a life of courage and, whether that's writing, jumping on podcasts like this one, even maybe speaking in events, like I would love to write a devotional for women who have lost their children, more so because of their own life choices, whether that's addiction or maybe they're incarcerated or something, and getting that devotional in to different jails and different, maybe other rehabs and healing centers. Because I found through working with the women that that particular topic, there's not a lot out there. And there's a lot of, once again, guilt and grief that comes with that. And and stepping into that and doing it because it's scary. That's something I haven't experienced before. So just continuing to take one step at a time and continuing to be obedient to him. I think I said this to you earlier, but I once heard a pastor say when he gets to heaven, he wants to hear Jesus say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And it's something that's been in my mind a lot, I would say within the last couple of months. And it's definitely changing the way that I'm trying to pursue things, such as my writing. I want him to be glorified and not everything just to be about me. And so I'm a work in progress. I have a lot to learn. But yeah, I think just continuing to be obedient to what he's called me to do.
When speaking to women, they talk about stepping into this kind of ministry, whether it's sex trafficking or even men who talk about child trafficking or addiction or all of any of these very hard fields, but they don't feel qualified. Like you said, this is nothing I've ever experienced, but I have a heart for it. But they're afraid.
Yeah.
They're afraid of, well, you mentioned the burnout. They're afraid of imposter syndrome. They're afraid of hurting people because they don't know what to say or what to do, what would you tell those people listening?
I would say if God's calling you to it, He will equip you. Don't go in blindsided. If there's so many different training opportunities to learn about, whether it's trafficking or addiction, working in trauma informed care models. And so do whatever learning that you can, but step out in boldness. If the Lord's calling you to it, He's going to help. I'm a living testimony of that. When I started working at Refuge, there were things that I didn't even know. I didn't have the names for. If a girl would dissociate, I'd be like, what's wrong with her? She's not answering me. But the Lord still helped guide me in those moments and to show them grace and mercy. And then I learned the skills to help ground them. And yes, you may be called to help them, but there's something in it that God has for you too. And it's very rewarding. So when you step past the fear and the discomfort, there is something that God has for you. And it's beautiful to see. Like with me, to see His faithfulness once again, I think I'm just in awe of Him in that.
We've talked about a lot of different things, but is there something that you wish I would have asked you that you believe the audience needs to know?
No, I would just say keep trusting God, keep moving forward, and, step out in courage because fear holds too many of us back.
It does. God keeps pointing out to me, it says, do not be afraid. And it was because it's like, I still feel fear. I still feel, how can I function feeling fear? And it was that word be, because be is a state of being and feelings pass through you.
Yeah.
But it's like, don't be afraid. In other words, sit there in it
Yeah.
and stay there in it.
Yeah. That's so good. I love that. I've never heard it felt like that. It's really good.
Holy Spirit highlighter. That's what I call it.
I love when He does that.
Me too. And my kids can tell when it happens because I go, oh, it's
Yeah.
just like something crosses my head and out of nowhere. And it's like my brain had been thinking about it in the
Mhm.
back of my head.
Yeah.
And then God shows me what it's supposed to be. So before we close, one of the things that I do is I have either audience members or previous podcast interviews ask a question for the next interview.
Okay.
And it just so happens that the interview I did right before you, she asked a question that is perfect for you.
Okay.
How has God shaped you in ministering to difficult populations of people?
He has shaped me in a lot of ways. I would say, learning how to operate in dependence of Him, but also not taking on the false responsibility that I have to fix everything. Again, I think there's a weird or just a hard line of knowing when to trust Him. And then when you're in a crisis situation, you have to act immediately. I mean, I think sometimes for me, there was just a lot of pressure with that. And so learning the proper way to give that pressure to Him, because I've experienced burnout in such a deep level. I have a lot to learn regarding it, but I also have a heart now for people that experience burnout as well. And so, He's teaching me the true meaning of rest. It doesn't just mean sleeping, which I love my sleep. Anybody that knows me knows that. But sometimes it just means sitting in His presence, just being still with Him. And then once again, I know I keep going back to He is faithful, but just the reminder that He's faithful. The times that I think of when I'm like, God, where are you? Why is this happening? Like, I thought I believed this thing, and now this belief is being questioned because of their story. And He wasn't mad at me. He let me ask the hard questions. He let me get angry. He let me process through with Him. And then over time, He began to answer those questions. And I don't want to pretend like every question has been answered, because I think, we're not to know every little detail. Our minds can't fathom that. But He never left me, and He never got mad at me and said, goodness gracious, Christina, why don't you know this yet? And He was just faithful and patient and kind in those moments. And so I really have learned a lot working at Refuge with these residents. I used to tell them all the time, I know I'm here to help you, but you guys have taught me so much and have helped me so much as well. And so it was just a beautiful dance of learning and guiding and leading and learning some more and, all of that. So,
One of the things I found with me is that the dark places, the hard things that I thought I was being dragged through is what gave me the compassion and understanding for what's going on. There was a time period my husband was laid off and we were living paycheck to paycheck, and I volunteered at a food pantry, and people were like, don't you care? No, because I know what this is. I know what this feeling is.
yeah.
And then when I worked at the Division of Family Resources, it was so easy to step into that
Yeah.
because I had experienced it myself. I had helped people.
Yeah.
And then I knew the shame that they felt coming to ask for help. And I had one of the clients write a note thanking me for giving him his dignity back.
Mm.
So while you didn't experience what they did, do you feel like that you being in those hard places in your journey made it easier to come from a place of understanding for them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And there's so many different emotions when trauma is involved. And, when you're coming out of a life of addiction and abuse,
Mhm.
there's trauma. It may not look the same, but there's trauma. And I know I reached out to my mentor after I recently stepped out into that position, the one who helped me walk through my addiction the first time. And I said, Miss Regina, there's so much you've taught me that I'm finding that I'm telling these ladies. So it's been amazing to see how God took my hard, dark moments, even though it didn't exactly match up with theirs, how God was able to use that to help them and walk through with them, to just sit with them in patience. I can be stubborn. And I just think of all the times in my past that I relapsed and how God's grace and my mentor Regina's grace is what carried me through, like
Mhm.
I would go back and say, oh my gosh, I've drank or used again, expecting to get in all this trouble. And I was met with grace. And I was also able, because I was given so much grace, to
Mhm.
give that to these ladies when they would make
Yes.
their mistakes. And so it's just really amazing how God has been able to use what I've been through, truly pour into these ladies and walk alongside them in their healing journey.
The burnout you talked about is called compassion fatigue. I didn't
Mhm.
know it was a thing until it happened with me. How are you helping the new leaders to walk through the compassion fatigue and not quit?
So I will say this is a very new position. I've been in this position maybe a month. And so it's once again a learning process. I know I'm a visual person, so I've already created different questions to ask. I'm meeting with them each at least monthly, if not more, to kind of help process through things, ask them questions to get a gauge on where they're at, and then communicating with their bosses of this is what I'm seeing. They could be showing signs of burnout. How do we,
Yes.
do they need some time off? Just more of the practical things. But also, I have been, like I said, I'm a writer. And so I've been journaling things that God has been revealing to me of why I
Mhm.
fell into that burnout. And so if I can see them, if I see one of the program directors maybe falling into a mindset that I found myself in looking back, I can point that out to them and say, this is what I feel like you're doing. And this is how God revealed to me. Um, that I was doing that and kind of how he assisted me through that. And so, like I said, it's still a new position. I'm still learning it. It's actually a brand new position in the organization as well. And so it's in the new stages, but I've just been praying to God to, if anything, just help them feel supported. I don't think I have to have all the answers, but just to say, hey, I've been there and I'm sorry. If you just want to cry, just cry and I'll sit here with you. Just be there with them.
Yes.
And so I'm excited that that is a new position in the organization because it is a gap that needed to be filled.
Well, thank you for your time today.
Yeah.
How can everybody find you and Refuge for Women?
Yeah. So Refuge for Women, you can go online at www.refugeforwomen.org. And then also, if you want to look at my Substack, if you just look up The Courageous Voice on Substack, you'll be able to find me.
Again, thank you for your time and for sharing your story. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was a good time.
Thank you so much for being here and spending this time with me. If this episode encouraged you, gave you clarity, or helped you think differently about your purpose and what God is calling you to do, I would love for you to follow the podcast, share it with someone who might need it too. Because the more we talk about faith, obedience, and living in God's purpose, the more we begin to recognize how God is working in our everyday lives too. And if you're in a place right now where you're asking, what is God calling me to do? How do I find my purpose? How do I hear God's voice more clearly? I've created something for you. It's a free guided resource called Living Out God's Purpose, 21-day journal and prayer prompts. It's about helping you slow down, quiet the noise, and begin to realign your life with what God is already speaking. You can download it for free using the link in the show notes. And just remember this as you go, you don't have to do everything. You just have to be faithful in what God has given you. That is what John 17:4 means. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next episode.